The story starts with a man who dies in his world of origin and reincarnates as a sword in a fantasy world. Suddenly, a voice inside the sword's head informs him of the difficulties ahead and then leaves. Despite wanting more answers, the sword chalks the voice to be a hallucination and realizes that if he's in an isekai world, he would have cheat skills. Wasting no time, he pulls out his menu to see his name and learns he's an intelligent weapon. Furthermore, the sword complements his skills and abilities. He then notes his design looks like a sword you find toward the end of an RPG. At that moment, some goblins try and draw him out of his pedestal. Provoked by the goblins, the sword uses his telekinesis skill to slay a couple of them immediately. The sword manages to slice a crystal inside one of the goblins, allowing him to absorb its power unknowingly. Once the goblin pack was finished off completely, the sword sees in his menu that he's accumulated crystals and has some new skills. Realizing that he can absorb skills from his defeated enemies, the sword hears a feminine voice notifying him that he has 10 skill slots available, and then asks if he would like to equip any. Before doing that, the sword stabs the corpse of a goblin and absorbs its crystal, thereby absorbing its 2 skills. Afterward, the sword uses his digging skill to bury the goblin pack's corpses and resets himself back into his sword mount. Looking forward to absorbing more crystals and gaining new skills, the sword also hopes that he would one day get a worthy master to wield him. Elsewhere, a young black cat girl works with a group of slaves under the orders of their slave trader master and internally notes her desire to become stronger. Returning to the sword, he uses his telekinesis to fly in the air for 3 minutes periodically, as his MP runs out within that time. Amid this, the sword encounters an air floater which he tries to kill instantly, but the monster constricts him with its tentacles and drains his MP. Desiring that skill for his own, the sword slices through the air floater's tentacles, freeing himself and immediately slays the monster, thereby absorbing its crystal. Once the sword absorbs 3 new skills, he notices one of them is called Float. This skill, combined with his telekinesis, allows him to fly for 5 times longer, and he uses it to slay a monster centipede. That evening, the sword locates a cave that acts as a goblin nest and slays the ones outside and most of the ones inside, gaining new skills in the process. In the deepest part of the cave, the sword, using stealth, locates the Goblin King surrounded by goblins. Using his telekinesis catapult attack, the sword instantly kills the Goblin King and proceeds to kill the rest of the goblins. Once that was settled, the sword learns that his sword mastery is up to level 3. Meanwhile, the black cat girl protects another slave from a beating by one of their overseers and is ordered to stand down. The following morning, the black cat girl tries to retaliate against her overseer again, only to be ordered down to the ground by the overseer. Later, she and the other slaves ride a wagon through a forest where the black cat girl chants that she'll get stronger and evolve. The sword back on his pedestal reflects how the further he's away from the location, the stronger types of monsters he encounters. The sword challenges a gluttonous slime and defeats it by combining his telekinesis catapult and wind shooter skills. By accomplishing this, the sword receives some new skills. One of them allows him to instantly regenerate himself at the cost of a ton of MP. The sword then tries out the pocket dimension, which instantly stores the gluttonous slime's corpse. Eventually, he would face off against the eastern boss, the northern boss, the western boss, and after defeating the monsters, the sword evolves again, gaining new stats. Longing to face off against new, stronger monsters, the sword heads into the forest beyond Area 5. When the sword plants himself into the ground, he learns that his MP was being absorbed by it and becomes stuck there. Meanwhile, a twin-headed bear attacked the wagon the black cat girl and the slaves rode on. It sequentially destroys the wagon and kills some of the slaves as well as an overseer. This grants the black cat girl's freedom, and while wielding a stick attacks the monster, but is blown away by its awesome power. Desiring more power, the sword calls out to the black cat, who finds him and uses him to defeat the twin-headed bear. After this, the slave trader tries to get the black cat to relinquish the sword, but he kills the trader and burns the contract that was connected to the black cat's collar. The black cat then agrees to become the sword's wielder to evolve, as no black cat has ever managed to evolve. Moved by the black cat's story, the sword agrees to train and help her achieve her goal. The black cat girl then introduces herself as Fran, and because the sword doesn't have a name, Fran calls him Teacher. Fran sleeps next to Teacher as they ride on a wagon to a city surrounded by a stone wall, where a horde of goblins plan to invade it. Fran then hears something and rushes to the scene despite Teacher's plea to learn what the problem is, skipping over to a merchant wagon surrounded by a large group of goblins. An adventurer named Randall struggles to protect the wagon with the merchant inside it. Arriving at the scene, Fran briskly eliminates the goblins as the lead goblin flees. Thankful for Fran's help, Randall asks if she'd like a ride to Alessa. En route to their destination, Randall explains to Fran the rise in monster encounters within the Great Wolf Plain. Apparently, a turf war occurred there, causing weaker monsters like goblins to take refuge by busy roads. Hearing this makes teacher conclude that his antics within the area cause recent trouble. Fran then asks if Randall knows about a playing sword implanted within the area. However, Randall does not, much to teacher's dismay. Randall then asks if Fran is a G-ranked adventurer, which perplexes her and teacher. Hence, Randall explains the monster ranking system to her and those who hunt monsters, adventurers. An explanation of adventurers is then given by Randall, who names a couple of famous ones. Desiring to become an adventurer herself, Randall explains that Fran will have to register at the Adventurers Guild, where she can sell her monster materials. Elsewhere, the goblin leader that fled after Fran's arrival returns to its base where a goblin shaman summons various species of goblins and, in the process, starts to mutate. Back to Fran's side, the wagon arrives in Alessa, and as Fran heads to the Adventurers Guild, teacher casts Identify on the weapons used by the adventurers. To his astonishment, all the weapons were much stronger than he was. At the guild, Fran approaches receptionist Nell and asks to register as an adventurer. Internally, Nell believes Fran to be unfit to be an adventurer, but still allows her to take the mock fight exam. Led to an arena, the examiner, Donadron, introduces himself to Fran with a loud, boisterous voice while using his intimidation skill. Casting Identify on Donadron, teacher is shocked by how strong Donadron is. At the start of the fight, Fran has trouble defending herself against Donadron's attacks, so teacher casts support buffs on her. With the buffs and the combination of earth and fire magic, Fran finishes the fight off with a Dragon Fang attack and passes the exam. Afterward, Fran, accompanied by Donadron, meets with the guild master Klimt in his office. Klimt tries to learn from Fran where she learned her sword skills and spells, but following teacher's advice, refuses to answer. Understanding, Klimt tries to use Identify on Fran. However, it's negated due to teacher's Identify protection. Teacher then casts Identify on Klimt and learns his impressive stats and skills. Just then, Nell hands Fran her guild card, and back at the receptionist's desk, Fran turns in some of her monster materials to earn herself a profit of 195,000 gold. As Fran tries to leave, a quartet of adventurers try and extort money from Fran, but Nell intervenes and disparages the group. One of the members tries to attack Nell, but Fran saves her. He disparages Fran as being from the Black Cat tribe, which triggers her and makes her slice off the adventurer's legs. She then takes out the remaining adventurers. Once that was done with, Fran leaves the guild, but a dwarf uses God's sight on teacher to deduce that he's an intelligence weapon. As Fran with teacher on her back explore the stalls seeking equipment, they're approached by Garrus, who suggests they visit his shop for some. Teacher casts Identify on Garrus to learn his name, stats, and skills, and is impressed by them. In Garrus' shop, Fran tries on the equipment that Garrus offers her, and teacher was impressed by their stats boosts and skills. Garrus then reveals that he knows teacher is actually an intelligent weapon. He reveals that he has an extra skill called God Eyes that allows him to see past identity protection. Using his God Eyes again, Garrus appraises teacher and notes that his skills are far more impressive than the others he's seen. Teacher points out that one of Garrus' swords is stronger than him. To demonstrate the difference between the two, Garrus retrieves the sword with higher attack power from the wall and asks that Fran unravel teacher, endow him with 100 mana points, and attack the sword. Fran does so, and the sword breaks with a single swipe. Garrus praises him as one of the most impressive enchanted swords. Garrus then inquires who originally forged teacher. However, teacher has no clue who may have forged him and asks if Garrus' God Eye could elaborate. On the other hand, Garrus details that someone of Garrus' smithing capability couldn't forge him. However, he notes that perhaps a godsmith could. Garrus then details the history of a godsmith and how they can forge swords called divine swords, of which teacher is not one. Furthermore, Garrus explains that the only divine sword he's ever seen was called Ignis. Thankful for what Garrus has told him thus far, teacher requests that Garrus create a sheath for him with the monster material he's collected. Unloading his collection of monster material, Garrus informs teacher that the material provided come from DC-ranked monsters and offers to create it for free. Told by Garrus that it will take 3 days for the sheath and a month for him to complete the armor, Fran and teacher leave Garrus' shop. Fran and teacher head to the general store owned by a towering man called Rufus. Fran asks him if he's an adventurer, whereas Rufus claims he retired and opened up the shop 3 years ago they're in now. Hence, Fran purchases a bunch of cooking supplies from the shop, and after they find an inn to stay at for the night, teacher makes fried chicken for Fran. Once Fran finished her dinner and was dressed in her pajamas, teacher allocated his EP to healing magic before they went to bed, to be better prepared for the battles ahead of them. Unbeknownst to them, a horde of goblins emerged from a cave. The following day, Fran and teacher find some heel grass in a local forest used as an ingredient in potions. They then find a fruit used to cure poison, and then some stam mushrooms, which are good for cooking. Because they were G-ranked adventurers, tasks like herb collecting were common, as were subjugating monsters, such as a few goblins. Fran then hears the voices of adventurers in trouble and heads to their location and finds the adventurers Lily, Kroll, and Eustace surrounded by 13 goblins. Arriving at the scene, teacher spots that some of the goblins are hobgoblins. Hence, Fran decides to rush in and assist the adventurers and defeats 3 of them with a fire spell. To prevent another unintentional bonfire that Fran created in the forest, teacher advises that she use earth magic instead. So both Fran and teacher, respectively, cast Stone Arrow and Stone Bullet against the goblins, taking out a few of them in the first volley. Fran then defeats a couple of the goblins with Double Slash, and teacher uses Stone Bullet against one, allowing Fran to level up to 4. She then finishes all of the goblins with teacher's Stone Bullet and Heavy Slash. Once that was done, Fran approached the adventurers and cast Circle Healing on them, and, as her reward, agreed to take the hobgoblin materials. When Eustace mentions the appearance of hobgoblins, signals a goblin stampede, and ignorant Fran and teacher learn what it is from the adventurers. After the explanation, a single goblin signals its comrades, and teacher takes it out with a stone bullet. With more goblins on the way, Fran has the adventurers return to Alessa to warn them about the upcoming goblin stampede as she deals with the incoming goblins. In doing so, Fran levels up to 8, and despite being surrounded and outnumbered by the goblins, she refuses to give in to them all. Teacher realizes the inadequacy in their strength. However, although Fran acknowledges they're weak, she wants to become stronger by mastering teacher better. Just then, 2 goblins attack them, and Fran kills them with a single slash. Surrounded by more goblins, Fran prepares to attack them, vowing to become stronger. As Fran does, teacher realizes that his overprotection was, in turn, a way of him not wanting to get hurt. Wanting to match Fran's determination, teacher resolves to help Fran the best he can to assist her. From there on out, Fran uses teacher to slay goblins until dusk. By accomplishing this, Fran levels up to 12. That night, Fran and teacher visit Garrus' shop, and Garrus comments on how worn-out looking Fran is and learns that she slew over 100 goblins. Teacher then asks Garrus if he can fix up Fran's armor and notes that 2 days from then, Fran will take on her first dungeon. The next day, Fran locates the goblin hideout dungeon, but is forbidden to enter by teacher, who suggests they collect the goblin crystals from their corpses. They're soon approached by Kroll, Lily, Eustace, and a couple of other adventurers. Fran points out the goblin hideout to the group, and a dwarven adventurer claims that the hideout didn't exist a month ago and believes it to be a recently formed dungeon. Kroll suggests Fran return to Alessa and inform the guild master about the dungeon while his group watches over the dungeon. Fran agrees to do it, and when she does, Donadrin demands to know how many goblins she slew, but Fran's answer is too vague. Clint then asks if Fran could answer the question more tangibly, so with teacher's help, she answers she slew about 130 goblins, 20 of which were high tier. Donadron believes that such a number would mean that it's a goblin stampede. Clem opines the situation's circumstances and is disconcerted that it's now considered a dungeon rather than a hideout. In light of this news, Clem promotes Fran to F rank. Later, Fran relays the news to Garrus, who repairs her armor with the help of 4 mana crystals on a table. Back at the inn, teacher checks Fran's stats and learns she earned herself a new title, Goblin Killer. Later, Nell vents to Fran about her disapproval of the Knights Brigade's refusal to assist in the goblin hunt, making the adventurers handle the entire situation. She then mentions that the Knight's lieutenant, a nobleman named Alsan, hates adventurers and is the one who turned down the request for assistance for the upcoming goblin. The following day, Fran and teacher visit Garrus' shop, giving them the custom scabbard that teacher requested. Wasting no time, teacher gets right into the sheath and is exhilarated by it. Garrus then explains the unique feature of a sheath that allows it to open vertically from a switch on its bottom. Afterward, Fran and teacher join up with the adventurers tasked with the goblin dungeon subjugation led by Donadrin, who reviews the objective tasks of the mission. Amid this, a swarm of goblins exit out of the dungeon. The ambush of abruptness causes the adventurers to separate into smaller groups, which teacher believes was the goblins' plan. Fran then rescues an adventurer at the mercy of a hobgoblin, and to avoid drawing attention by collecting crystals, Fran decides to head inside the cave. Before reaching her destination, Fran uses Air Leap to gain an aerial advantage and then casts Tri-Explosion to kill multiple goblins at once. She then uses Sonic Wave to kill multiple ones, and they follow up with Flare Blast. With a clear pathway, Fran and teacher head inside the cave, where deep inside it, the dungeon master gloats about how the ambush he orchestrated has the humans in a tizzy. As the dungeon master laughs, a shadowy figure floats beside him. Fran-wielding teacher rushes into the dungeon as Donadron and the other adventurers follow suit while slaying the goblins that block their way. Teacher advises Fran to be prudent and to use the feather of return if the fight ahead becomes too burdensome. Following teacher's directions, Fran collects the crystals. Soon, they find an opening with a pathway leading to the second floor. Stabbing teacher into the ground, teacher simultaneously uses echolocation, tremor sense, sense presence, and thermal vision to scout ahead. Detecting two hobgoblin archers, Fran and teacher immediately confront the goblins, making them flee. However, this allows them to follow the goblins back to their king and queen. Fran locates the king and queen, accompanied by a large pack of goblins. Admonishing Fran from charging forward, teacher suggests they thin out the goblin numbers first with spells and then deal with the king and queen. However, this plan backfires after teacher accidentally kills the king and queen, much to Fran's disappointment. Continuing forward, it's speculated that neither the goblin king nor queen wasn't the dungeon master. At the end of the pathway, they reach a doorway, where behind it they're ambushed by swarms of army beetles, which some have new skills for them to gain. After 30 minutes of slaying the monsters, little to no progress is had in their endeavor. Teacher then sees an army beetle leader and realizes it summoned more beetles as Fran killed them. Teacher casts Tri-Explosion, eliminating the army beetles and leaving the leader vulnerable enough to be slain by Fran. After gaining a summon minion skill and her wing magic leveling up to 7, Fran finds another door. Behind it, a potent magical aura could be felt. Entering through the door, Fran and teacher are greeted by a big-winged demon. In a lesson, Nell visits Klimt in his office to inquire about Donadron and Fran's dungeon subjugation quest. Klimt alleviates any of Nell's concerns, noting that strong monsters shouldn't inhabit the newly formed dungeon. Donadron's group cannot pass through the second floor's first door within the dungeon. Over to Fran's side, teacher casts Identify on the creature and learns it's a greater demon with powerful skills. One of those skills, Skill Taker, concerned teacher, and he informed Fran about what he heard from Randall about greater demons. The true dungeon master, a rare type of goblin, orders the demon to deal with Fran and chastises her for killing his goblin minions. Rebelling against his master, the greater demon tells the goblin to shut up or die as he handles Fran. Teacher and Fran face off against the greater demon, who wields his own sword. Amid their fight, the greater demon held a great advantage over Fran, who managed to slice off Fran's hands. Panic-stricken, teacher casts Firewall to protect Fran from further damage and reattaches Fran's hands with greater heal. The greater demon then tries to ambush Fran using his dark magic, which teacher deduces he's teleporting via shadow magic, using Fran's shadow as a teleportation catalyst. Launching a counterattack against the greater demon, Fran manages to land a hit, but her opponent retaliates with a powerful spell. Despite teacher's advice to use the Feather of Return when chance arises, Fran is determined to win. Acknowledging that Fran's swordsmanship and agility were superior to his, the greater demon uses his Skill Taker ability to steal them from Fran. Supposedly stealing Fran's skills, the greater demon attacks Fran, only to have the left side of his mouth sliced open by her. Teacher realizes that the greater demon was unaware that he shared his skills with Fran. Hoping to assist the greater demon, the dungeon master summons a horde of goblins, but they're instantly destroyed by the demon's black bomb spell. Warning the dungeon master not to interfere again or his limbs will be torn off, the greater demon then casts Darkness Thunderbolt against Fran. Within the upper parts of the dungeon, Donadron's group tries to break down the door leading to the deeper level where Fran was. Returning to Fran's side, teacher suggests that they use the Feather of Return to escape. However, Fran refuses, noting the consequences if they do. Dodging the demon's darkness spears, teacher agrees to give Fran all the power she'll need as she deftly dodges the demon's darkness blaster attacks. Assessing the situation, teacher cogitates on a possible weakness as Fran now dodges black bombs followed by another darkness blaster and darkness thunderbolt. During these attacks, teacher notices that the demon purposely avoids the dungeon master. So to test the theory, teacher has Fran cast Fire Arrow at the dungeon master, causing the demon to block the attack with his body. It's then recalled what Donadron once said about what happens to a dungeon once its master is killed. Hence, Fran and teacher do cast multiple fire spells against the demon, who negates the spells with a barrier. With their MP going to run out, teacher proposes a gamble, and after the demon casts another Darkness Thunderbolt, teacher casts Mana Sense. It allows teacher to conclude that it takes 3 seconds for the demon to regen its MP after a big spell. Hence, teacher tells Fran to cast a wind spell to fling him toward the dungeon master. Fran does so and creates a decoy with some fire spells. However, the demon was privy to their plans and attacked teacher with a darkness blaster. But this act was a decoy as teacher redirects himself toward the demon to stab him in his crystal. Using nearly all of his MP, teacher defeats the demon, only to end up in a broken state, leaving Fran devastated. At that moment, Teacher starts to regenerate thanks to the demon's crystal and his MP region skill. Exploiting Fran emotionally cradling Teacher, the dungeon master tries to use his remaining MP to summon another powerful demon, but Fran stops him before he does. She also slices off his hand, which had a sacrificial armband that would allow him to revive after he dies, and stores it away from herself. After this, the dungeon master dies, and the cave transforms into an ivory brick room. Donadron and his party then arrive at the scene, and Donadron praises Fran for her accomplishment, but then disciplines her for running ahead without them. Afterward, while the dungeon's subjugation party returns to Alessa, Teacher informs Fran that she's leveled up to 25 and has both new skills and impressive stats to boot. That night, Fran returns to the Adventurers Guild, where Clint greets and congratulates her for her recent accomplishment within the dungeon. On the other hand, Clint asks Fran what happened to the demon's crystal, and Fran answers that it broke when she slew it. Suddenly, a man in armor barges into the room and claims that Fran was lying. The pompous and pretentious knight who barged into Clem's office and confronted Fran introduced himself as August Alsend, lieutenant of the Alessa Knights Brigade. Fran and Teacher recall hearing August's name from Nell before, and August then gloats about having a skill that detects lies. Teacher casts Identify on August and gets a vocal description of his special skill, Essence of Falsehood. Its description makes Teacher believe that August exploits his ability to his corrupt whims. Despite August's plea to handle Fran for lying to him, Clint formally rejects it, noting Fran's accomplishment by slaying a greater demon. Furthermore, August demands take the monster's crystals and materials is rejected too, citing how his knights didn't partake in the dungeon's subjugation. Although August argues the provided information was vague and disparaged the adventurers there, Clint rebukes August's comments and claims. He also opines how strange it was that Captain Urs rejected his request for assistance with the subjugation and believed that August decided for him. As the argument continues between Klimt and August, Fran tries to mediate the situation by offering her goblin materials, which is swiped away by the disgusted August. Motivated by rage, Fran suggests stabbing August, but is stopped by Teacher, who suggests giving a test run of their newly acquired skill taker on August. Fran agrees and they steal August's essence of falsehood along with noble etiquette. Now unable to detect lies and act appropriately, August leaves the office as Nell enters. Clint announces to Fran that she's been promoted to D rank. An elated Fran thanks Clint with a polite curtsy stemming from her noble etiquette skill. Later, Fran formally receives her new rank and rewards from Nell at the receptionist desk. She's then congratulated by the dwarf adventurer Elevin and the other adventurers there. A week passes by, and in that time, Fran takes on various guild quests until her armor is completed by Garrus. On one late afternoon, Fran learns from the Alessa gatekeeper about Viscount Alsend, or the ignoble knight August was looking for Fran. The gatekeeper warns Fran to keep an eye out for any trouble she may encounter involving him, and Fran thanks him for the warning. While walking through the town streets, Teacher notifies Fran they're being tailed. Hence, Fran leads the followers to an inconspicuous area where one of the people reveals themselves to be the now sloven August, who Fran doesn't recognize or remember. Upset by this, August calls out his hired assassin Guren, a blue cat, the weaker subversion of Fran's black cat heritage. Guren disturbs Fran, making her draw Teacher from his sheath. Ignorant of the history behind the blue cat clan, Fran explains the horrific backstory they have against her black cat clan. Gloating Guren's credentials, August orders him to deal with Fran and leaves for a safe distance. Fran's fight against Guren begins with him walking behind her and whispering if she's afraid of him. In Fran's brief moment of hesitation, Guren tries to attack her, but Teacher alerts Fran so she can defend herself against the attack. Teacher learns that Guren's sword was better than the greater demons, and Fran confesses that blue cats hunted Fran and her parents. Gaining the upper hand against Fran, Guren recounts a time when he tortured a black cat mother and daughter. Becoming dispirited, Fran is reminded by Teacher about her ultimate goal to evolve and compares Guren as inferior compared to the greater demon they have faced. Overcoming her fear, Fran slices off Guren's sword hand after learning the number of black cats he's slain. She then slices off Guren's limbs and finishes him off by slicing the upper part of his head. Before Fran could deal with the frantically distraught August, a water spirit sent by Clint stops and summons her back to his office. There, Clint reveals that August's father had put out a warrant for his arrest regarding a family scandal. However, thanks to Fran handling the situation, Clint would handle August from there on out. Although uninterested in the details, Fran asks if she would be paid for her work, and Clint confirmed it. Before Fran can leave Clint's office to claim her reward, she bumps into an elf. Apologetic at first, the elf then embraces Fran, asking to address her as Mommy. As Fran struggles to be released by the elf's embrace, Clint asks the elf named Amanda to knock it off. Teacher casts Identify on Amanda and learns her stats well reflect her rank. Amanda then details that she's heard stories surrounding Fran from the guild lobby. Right before Fran leaves the office, Amanda claims they'll talk again, but Fran rejects the comment. After Fran's first encounter with Amanda, she's stalked by her. With each instance, they bump into each other being a coincidence. Succumbing to the pressure created by Amanda, Fran vents her frustrations to Nell, who details that Amanda owns and runs an orphanage for children who had lost their parents. Appearing beside Nell, Amanda recites the word coincidence again, and Nell then informs her that Clint wants to see her. In Clint's office, Clint offers Fran a choice of 2 crystals from his collection in exchange for accepting a quest involving a dungeon called the Spider's Nest. However, with Fran's haggling skills, she manages to squeeze 5 out of Clint, much to his chagrin. Fran then learns from Clint that the quest was imposed on her not only because of nasty rumors surrounding their relationship, but for her to complete a quest of her rank. Furthermore, if Fran completes the quest, she'll be granted access to the dungeon in Ulmut. Just then, Amanda breaks down the door to Clint's office, barges into the room, and openly declares she'll be accompanying Fran on it, and Clint begrudgingly agrees. Afterward, Fran sits in her room enjoying some curry that teacher made for her, and they discuss what to expect with the Spider's Nest. Their conversation then shifts to the crystals given to them by Clint, which 3 are D-ranked and 2 are C-ranked. Wasting no time, teacher absorbs the crystals, causing his abilities to evolve. When Fran arrives at the designated location for her quest, she's embraced by Amanda. Then, the lead adventurer Cruz of Azure Guardians introduces himself and his teammates, Rake and Izel, who will act as the arbiters of the Rank E, Rank Up quest. Cruz then asks that the other teams introduce themselves, and Crad of the Dragon's Roar goes first and gives Fran a disapproved look. Fry and Eyes of the Forest party leader goes next, then Amanda, and finally Fran. Upon hearing Fran's name, Crad becomes contentious toward Fran, claiming she manipulated the guild master to promote her quickly. He then recites the nasty rumors surrounding the guild master and calls Amanda an old lady, prompting her to accost Crad and force him to apologize. Freed from Amanda's grasp, Crad still refuses to believe Fran didn't manipulate the guild master to achieve her ranking, but Fran still denies it. Cruz's explanation about the quest continues about Amanda's role in it, a summary of the quest details, and the Spider's Nest dungeon where it takes place. They then press forward, and teacher mentions a tip from Garrus about how dungeon cores spawn crystals and monsters, which help guilds financially function. Also, as they venture to their destination, Fran is attacked by Crad, who in turn is disciplined by Amanda. These actions cause the whole group to be behind schedule. A camp is set up that night, and Fran is assigned to be first on watch duty. As she does, Crad provokes her into dueling him by disparaging teacher. Hence, teacher suggests that Fran erect a wind and earth barrier to keep watch for monsters. Fran then casts Wind and Earth Zone, which astonishes Fryan. The two then duel, but Fran easily defeats Crad, but intrigues Amanda, who asks her to a friendly duel. Fran accepts on the condition that Amanda stops following her if she wins, and Amanda decides that if she wins, Fran will start calling her Mommy. Determined not to lose, Fran informs the worried teacher that she accepted the challenge to figure out how long she'd last against a rank A adventurer. However, Fran loses in the duel, but not without putting up a worthy challenge for Amanda, who allows Fran to not address her as Mommy. Eventually, the group reaches the Spider's Nest, and Cruz uses his guild card, granting passage into it. Walking into the dungeon, teacher warns Fran to be on guard when she's in there. Inside the Spider Nest dungeon, Cruz arranges the group into their respective positions. Amanda tells Fran about her history with the dungeon and how it inspired her to open an orphanage. Their conversation ends when trapped spiders surround them, but are quickly disposed of by the adventurers as Fran stands by and watches with Amanda. Later, hornet monsters are dealt with there, and as they progress, Fran asks Amanda the difference between arts, skills, and magic. As Amanda explains, arts, more insect monsters attack the others, and Crad's power swing attack is used as an example of her explanation. Cruz warns the group that the floor is more booby-trap-centric, which Crad's party unwittingly activates some on themselves. While the other adventurers active more traps, Amanda starts explaining to Fran about skills. During Amanda's explanation, Ezel uses his trap sense to assist him in disarming the traps of their path ahead. Heading onward, Amanda continues her explanation concerning skills and talks about the different types of skills called unique and bonus. Amanda's explanation then gravitates over to magic as she explains the 4 main elements associated with it. She also details how each element can be learned through vigorous training associated with each element. At the doorway, a swarm of trap spiders block their way forward. Fryan's team leads an attack against the monsters while Crad's party assists as a backup. Cruz decides for the group to take a break. Amanda explains compound magic to Fran. As the group heads forward, a new variant of the trap spiders ambush the group and Genel becomes afflicted with lethal poisoning. Hence, Fran uses the healing magic antidote on him. Fran's identify reveals the spider's name as Trick Spiders, and Groose decides that everyone retreats back. With Fran and Amanda's assistance, they secure a way back. However, Fran is knocked into a teleporter. Fran, Victor, and Bowles teleport into another part of the dungeon without Teacher. They all are trapped in a room with a trickster spider. The remaining group discusses finding Fran's group and dealing with the trickster spider. Ultimately, Cruz teams up with Crad's group, Rick teams up with Fran's, and Amanda will proceed on her own with Teacher. At a safe distance, Amanda uses the wind magic noise collector to try and echolocate Fran's location. To her disappointment, Amanda could not find Fran and continues onward as Teacher worries for Fran's well-being. While Amanda uses noise collector again, Teacher uses split thinking to figure out a skill he could use to help find Fran's location. Teacher decides to use his summon minion skill, and following the system announcer's advice, summons an Onyx Wolf that immediately attacks him. Alerted by the mysteriously summoned Onyx Wolf's presence, Amanda readies her weapon only for Teacher to telepathically communicate with her to stop. He then explains that he's a friend of Fran and that the wolf was there to locate her. Despite being confused by the situation, Amanda agrees to stand down as Teacher learns the wolf was under the influence of mana frenzy. Said ailment was caused by Teacher using excessive mana to summon the wolf, causing it to experience severe pain and recognize its summoner as a threat. Amanda then proposes that Teacher name the wolf as a possible way to tame it. Teacher names the wolf Jet, which not only tames it, but also evolves it into a shadow wolf. With Jet now obedient to his commands, Teacher has Jet get a whiff of Fran's scent so he can locate her. Once Jet picks up Fran's scent, he takes Teacher to her location as Amanda follows in pursuit. Fran, on the other hand, along with Victor and Bowles, were at the trickster spider's mercy and would be overwhelmed by some baby trick spiders. However, recalling Teacher's reassurance, Fran gets the courage to fight back by rescuing her two fellow captives from the baby spiders and uses her hands and legs to kill them. Switching over to Teacher's side, his group draws closer to Fran's location until they reach a dead end that Jet suspected Fran was in the vicinity of. Hence, Amanda casts Tornado Lance that destroys the dead-end wall, revealing a hidden pathway littered with spider webs and spiders. Teacher volunteers to go into the newly revealed passageway first. Meanwhile, Fran continues her skirmish against the Tricker Spider. Their fight is interrupted by Teacher, who casts Eternal Fire on himself and catapults himself through the Trickster Spider, thereby reuniting himself with Fran. Because the Trickster Spider had run away, Teacher casts Greater Heal and Antidote on Fran. After Jet is formally introduced to Fran, Amanda personally asks Teacher why he's a talking sword, and with his permission, Fran discloses Teacher's secret to her. After the big revelation, Teacher and Fran heal Victor and Bowles, who were both on the verge of death. Fran's group confronted by a white owl monster as hordes of trick spiders ambush Cruz's side. Soon, Fran rode on Jet's back and was accompanied by Amanda, who had carried Balls and Victor. While Balls and Victor are reunited with Crad and Gentle, Fran has Jet rescue the remaining adventurers trapped by the trick spider's webs. Both Fran and Amanda then respectively use fire and wind spells to eliminate the remaining spiders surrounding the area. The white owl monster turned out to be Rig's familiar. Close by, the trickster spider is revealed to have been there, and Fran decides to attack it, but the spider uses its baby's webs to create a shield for itself. Rig then has his familiar heal everyone with its magic, and with that, Cruz has Fran deal with the trickster spider, while he and the others take care of the trick spiders. Using Flare Burst, Fran destroys the trickster spider's shield web and rides on top of Jet with Teacher enchanted with fire magic to slay the trickster spider. However, the trickster spider entraps her in a sphere comprised of trick spiders so that it can escape. In order to break out of their entrapment, Fran and Teacher do cast Stun Bolt, allowing them to sequentially break free of their entrapment and stun the trickster spider. The trickster spider's retaliation causes Fran to become overwhelmed, triggering Amanda, who defeats it and destroys its crystal. Doing this upsets Fran, who had wanted to finish off the trickster spider herself, which makes Amanda disheartened by her actions. After locating a newfound passageway, the group located where the dungeon core and the crystals were and proceeded to collect them. Reporting back to Clint, the guild master praises Fran for her recent accomplishments in the dungeon excavation. Because of them, Klimt allows Fran to explore the Olmut mine and advises her to check her job classes too. Fran does so with Nell's assistance, and of the available new classes, she chooses Battlemage. Afterward, Fran visits Garrus' workshop to pick up the armor she commissioned called the Black Cat Armor. It also turns out that Garrus was heading toward Olmut as well, but instead of by sea, like Fran and Teacher, he plans on going through the mountains. The following day, Fran is seen off by all of the friends that she made in Alessa, and after she says her goodbyes to them all, rides off on Jet. Meanwhile, Rig is shown to be Klimt's nephew, who was tasked with investigating reports made with the Trick Spider dungeon that was said to be connected to August Alsand. He hatched a plot to divert control of the dungeon from Alessa Rados. Rig was also tasked with spying on Fran to see if she was a spy for Rados, but that notion was dismissed after hearing the owl's report. Fran flies on Teacher while heading toward a flying island, only to be ambushed by an undead monster. Fran then crash-landed in the house where a man who calls himself the necromancer Jean Duvix lived. The end. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more amazing recaps.